will be laid open to view to all created intelligences. The law of God will stand fully vindicated. It will be seen that all the dealings of God have been conducted with reference to the eternal good of his people and the good of all the worlds that he has created. Satan himself, in the presence of the witnessing universe, will confess the justice of God's government and the righteousness of his law. So should we pay attention to what God says in his law? I think so. I think it's very clear. If we read throughout the Word, that his law is perfect, holy, and just, and it's the same characteristics as his character. So I think it should be very important not to take away nor add anything. Now, anybody or any institution or any entity that may claim to add or to have the right to change this, warning flags should go up. And as I've been talking to a few friends that are all concerned about this COVID and all this stuff, not from the church. Some of them are open to listening. They're thinkers, and we're told that thinking men and women will be paying attention in the last days. So do not add, and let us listen to what the Lord says. Now, as we move to Monday's lesson, which is the next verse, verse 3 and 4. I think it's reviewing something that happened back in Numbers 25, 1 through 15. And we could read that. Hopefully you read it in your homes. But the story does not start there. And at the beginning I mentioned I wish the lesson would have gone a little deeper into that. A few chapters before, I believe in 23, and that's the story of Balaam, right? That's the story of Balaam. And let's review a little bit that story. So the children of Israel have been going around for 40 years because they were unfaithful, right? They were not ready to go into the promised land. And as these 40 years are finishing, they are now presented with the promised land. And as they wrap up their journey, they start some battles with some of the kings, and they're just wiping everybody out. And some of these kings are like, whoa, what's going on here? And if you read the story there in pre-chapter 25 to 23, 24, Balak, one of the kings of the Moabites, goes and sends for Balaam. And he says something very interesting. He says, because these children that came out of Egypt are about to come over and destroy us. We need to somehow curse them. And it is interesting that how many years have passed since they came out of Egypt? You remember what happened? We don't remember what happened 10 years ago. We don't. But yet this king is reminded to Balaam, did you remember what these people did to the Egyptians, or the God of these people made to the Egyptians? They destroyed the Egyptians with their plagues. So he's reminding them 40 years ago, these people are somehow supernaturally backed up. I mean, they have some kind of power, and it's their God. So we need to do something. So he goes to Balaam, which used to be a prophet. Let's call him a false prophet. Should we call him a false prophet? We're told that he was a prophet. He's not a prophet, but he apparently has some supernatural connections, right? And he goes now, just like Pharaoh. Pharaoh tried to get his witch doctors, his magicians, to do the tricks that he thought Moses was doing, right? So now Balak goes and gets Balaam to do, hey, curse these people and throw some magic spell at them so they cannot destroy them. And we won't go to the story. That's a different sermon, I guess, a few different sermons. And, because of the covetousness, we're told covetousness there in Patriarchs and Prophets, that turned Balaam into a false prophet. Now, covetousness is what? It's the 10th commandment, right? It's the last commandment. But Paul says that covetousness is idolatry.
Covetousness is wanting and going after and hurting somebody to get something they want that you want.
Yes. Covetousness is wanting something for. So that means that. So who's in the throne when covetousness is present? Self. But God says, thou shalt worship the Lord with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy being. So who's in the throne? Self. So we're worshiping self. So when Paul says covetousness is as idolatry, that means we have something else in the throne. Okay? So yes, it's not putting self in place. So that's what brought Balaam down. That's what destroyed him. And Balaam, now we review the story, is called to curse Israel. And he tried how many times? 3 times. He tried, and let's go to a higher place. And 7 sacrifices. Balaam knew something about number 7. And Balaam knew something about the sacrifices of these people. And again, nothing. And let's go higher. And let's go higher. More sacrifice. And every time, blessings. The Lord just, you can't curse these people. Why couldn't he curse them? Why couldn't he curse them?
Because they're blessed.
Why were they blessed?
According to the promise.
And what was the promise?
That God will bless the seed of Abraham.
Oh, yes. As long as they would follow the statutes, right? It was a condition. From you, the whole world is going to be blessed through your seed, which is talking about Messiah. The Messiah is going to come from this line. So I'm going to preserve the truth through you to bless all people. And as long as you walk in that truth, there's nothing that can harm you. Okay? I'm going to read a little something here. From Patriarchs and Prophets, page 439. God was on their side, and so long as they were true to him, no adverse power of earth or hell could prevail against them. No power, physical, supernatural, nothing can harm them. Balaam knew that the prosperity of Israel depended upon their obedience to God, and that there was no way to cause them their overthrow but by seducing them unto sin. He now decided, so he now says, I can't curse them. So we're told that what does he suggest to Balak, to the king? I know there's a little story. He goes back and then he thinks about this and he returns to Balak. And what does he suggest? Now we're told, now we're down to chapter 25 of Numbers, and he now decides to secure Balak's favor by advising the Moabites of the course to be pursued to bring a curse upon Israel. He immediately returned to the land of Moab and laid his plans before the king. The Moabites themselves were convinced that so long as Israel remained true to God, he would be their shield. The plan proposed by Balaam was to separate them from God by enticing them to idolatry, sin. Now we're now to chapter 25 of Numbers, and let's go there real quickly. And it's a condensed story. But it's a little strong. I think it's a little strong, but these things are written for us. And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. We don't need to go into too many details, right? We know what that is. And they called the people unto sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bow down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And I guess we need to stay here a little bit longer because it has some lessons for us. Okay, and I'm going to skip all the way to Friday. I'm going to read that section because it has to do with this part of the story. They ventured upon the forbidden ground. Are there forbidden grounds? There are places forbidden. And were entangled in the snare of Satan. Now, let's pay attention to the order. Okay? Or let's look at the order. Okay? Beguiled with music and dancing. Okay? Listen, there's a stepping, there's an order here. So, beguiled with music and dancing, and allured by the beauty of heathen vessels. Okay, this in order. Music, dancing,